This is the Johnny Cleveland Podcast, all things Cleveland sports, with your host, John Suchan. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Good Friday. This is another episode of the Johnny Cleveland Podcast, part of the new Fanatical Elves Network, and we are going to be talking NFL Browns draft strategy today, needs, and I've got a special guest here. We've had him on the show before for our podcast, and he's also a contributor now with our Fanatical Elves Network. Very happy to have BP and Pepper Pike here. Welcome, BP. How are you doing today?
Doing well, John. How are you?
I'm good. I'm glad we got to the weekend. This is my my spring break. Our school is off for the next week, so I had today off. I planted a tree in the backyard, so it's beautiful weather down here in Columbus. A little cool. I don't know what it's like up there where you're at.
Similar weather, 50 degrees and sunny.
Excellent. Always nice. I don't miss, I'll tell you, I told you before, I lived in Kansas all those years, and I do not miss the wind. It was always windy any day of the week in Wichita. I love the sunny skies, but I don't miss the wind. So not much wind today. Had a lot of rain this past week down here. We got buckets of rain. So, but it's sunny today. Yeah.
No, Cleveland, we got a ton of wind here. That's we're like the Windy City Part 2.
That's right. But, well, I'm really happy to have you on the show today, and we're just gonna look at a lot of different. I know we've had some other guests on this week on a Fanatical Elves Network. We are part of Fans First Sports Network now too, and we're very excited to kind of get this product off and rolling. We've had some really good shows this last week. We've been giving away prizes left and right. We've gave away a pullover the other day and a ball cap just this past week. We're giving away a great Cleveland Browns t-shirt. So check that out on our Twitter handle. It's our Elves Network. We've actually got two Twitter handles now. So 2 for the price of 1, Elves Network and then Elves Network 2. So follow us. And I know BP, you're helping that out, and we're excited to have you on board and helping us launch this site. So with the Browns draft, before we get to there, I want to kind of talk to you a little bit about free agency. I know you had some takes on that, how they, we've had a chance to kind of, look a little bit at who they've picked up, and getting a lot of positive reviews, from a variety of sources here in Cleveland and around the country. So how do you see things have panned out so far?
Yeah, the free agent. Obviously the Browns last season were 7-10. It was a very disappointing season. No one thought Deshaun Watson was going to be suspended for 11 games. I thought it was going to be 6 to 8. I think the Browns, when they traded for Watson, thought it was going to be 4 to 6 games, something modest where they could have sort of weathered the storm with the backup quarterback. When the news came down last season that it was going to be 11 game suspension, it was devastating for the whole season. And so I felt our season was kind of doomed from there. And then, when you look back on it, Jacoby Brissett went 4-7, which I know he gets a lot of accolades up here in Cleveland. I still think, if he played a little bit better, we could have, been 7-4 in some of those games.
BP, isn't it interesting? Like I like your assessment on Brissett. It's all, he was praised quite a bit, but really statistically, you look at his career, he's not. He's a 4-7 kind of quarterback. So
exactly, yeah. There was the game against the Jets. There was an interception against the Falcons. I was at the Los Angeles Chargers game. There was a horrible interception in the fourth quarter when he could have probably ran the ball right into the end zone for a touchdown or a first down. And that was those. Those are the 3 losses that turned us from could have been 10-7.
You were there. Yeah, I know that game was crazy.
I was at the Chargers game and I was in that end zone sitting there 5 rows from where Brissett was. And I was like, oh yeah. And it was just took the life out of the stadium.
Oh, it did, because we had actually walked all the way around to the backside where your seats were. And because we were on the other side. By the time we wrapped around, we were dealing with all those bugs that day. Remember the bugs off the lake?
Yeah, that was those midges.
Yeah, those midgets. Yeah. Anyway, we had the same experience because we were up above there, actually on the opposite end, I should say. And when he threw that interception, he had that gap, and you could see it from our angle as clear as day. But anyway, it was just a bad throw.
Yeah, and there was. Even that game was a microcosm of the season because earlier in that game, the running back, Austin Eckler for the Chargers ran for 71 yards. We had like a 3rd and 10, and they run the ball like on a draw play, and he gets 70 yards. It's like, oh, here we go again. That showed you that the defense was not going to cut it.
Right.
The run defense. So that's why, I was looking forward to seeing what the Browns did here in the offseason. I think they did very well. I'm going to give you just an overview. I'm going to look at the offense and the defense. So break it down, because I think the free agency deserves a good amount of time.
Absolutely.
Browns had a lot of holes to fill, and I think they did a good job overall. But I'll give you first on the offense. I give the offensive free agency grades a B overall. I think, I consider the trade for Elijah Moore part of what they did in free agency, even though they did give up a draft pick there, but they got back a draft pick. But I consider that part of the free agency. I mean, I personally have never heard of the guy until the trade went down. I have to be honest. I know there was rumblings that he was unhappy with the Jets during the season because they brought in some other guys. They brought in the receiver from Ohio State, Garrett Wilson, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so he was kind of like left out. He didn't get many targets, and so I wanted the Browns to try to get him back in October. And he actually, back at the Browns-Jets game, he had about 3 catches for 45 yards. So even that was a sort of a microcosm of what this guy can do. I mean, that's pretty good production for your 3rd or 4th receiver. And that's what he did against the Browns.
Yep.
So I think I really like this pickup a lot. I mean, he's been compared to sort of like a, like a poor man's Tyreek Hill. Mm-hmm. Or even the guy that played for the Steelers. What was the guy? Antonio Brown.
Yep.
He has been compared to him. When he was coming out of the draft from Mississippi State, he was compared to Antonio Brown, like a shorter guy, but with fantastic speed. I mean, if this guy's anything like Antonio Brown, we'll all be very happy here in Cleveland. He'll be worth that 2nd-round pick.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he's got, these guys don't get paid that much. He's got a lot to play for. And I think he's also still on his contract. So, he's on like a short-term contract where he needs to, produce, and then he'll get paid. Mm-hmm. So he's got a lot of motivation to show the NFL that he belongs. So I do really like, we were talking earlier about like guys like DeAndre Hopkins. We did, that was like our wish list.
Right.
And, this Jerry Jeudy from Denver and, there was other guys, but, this is who we kind of ended up with, like this veteran receiver with a lot of upside. And I think he's only about 23 years old.
Yeah. He is.
Yeah. So we'll see and then plus he'll be learning from Deshaun Watson. He'll be learning from, Amari Cooper. He'll be, taking on a lot from our Browns coaching staff. And it'll be very positive here because the Browns really do need him to produce.
The other wide receiver that they picked up in the free agency that was even more experienced was Marquise Goodwin. Yeah.
I mean, I looked up his stats. He's good for about 500 yards a year, 3 or 4 touchdowns. I felt the Browns needed this kind of depth last year. I was shocked. I said here on local Cleveland radio, The Fan, that Andrew Berry almost was punting on the season. I don't feel without Watson, I thought they should have brought in our veteran receivers. In fact, I thought the Browns should have brought in that guy, Will Fuller from the Houston Texans. Going into last season, he had great production with Watson. They were buddies. I think Will Fuller, maybe he's a head case or something, but like that's the kind of guy I wanted the Browns to bring in last season.
Yeah, no, it's.
I always believe now. No, we talked about Elijah Moore. We talked about Marquise Goodwin. Now the Browns, under the radar, they brought in this Jordan Akins, a tight end from Houston. And I look back in 2020, he caught 5 touchdowns from Deshaun Watson in Houston. So I have a feeling Deshaun Watson lobbied for this guy. Now, this might put Harrison Bryant in a little bit of jeopardy, but that's life in the big. I mean, that's how you get better. Maybe this guy's a good blocker as well, but he's more than a blocker. He's caught 5 touchdowns from Deshaun Watson. He's also good for 300 or 400 yards a season at tight end. There's so many injuries. David Njoku gets injured, every year, a couple of games here and there. So I really like the signing of this Jordan Akins as well.
It's a good pick. Yeah.
And so
anybody else that you see? Yeah. Any other observations?
Also, the Browns re-signed their starting center, Ethan Posich. Mm-hmm. Again, that's under the radar, but I like it because that's also
great pick. Yep.
I mean, you're only as good as your line. I know the other guy that is a commentator here with the fans, with the Fanatical Elves. He loves to talk about the lines, and you're only as good as your offensive line and your defensive line. If you don't have good line play, you might as well just forget about it.
Absolutely.
We saw that when Baker Mayfield was here. If a couple of guys are missing or out, then your quarterback needs time. So I'm glad the less holes the Browns had coming to the draft, the better. Ethan Posich was a great signing. Mm-hmm. I thought he was good coming over here from Seattle last year. So I'm pleased with what the Browns did on offense. I give them a B for their free agency grade. Maybe a B plus, but I don't think it's an A or A plus, but I think it's a solid B.
Okay.
And because I still, I personally, I still feel they have a hole at running back with Kareem Hunt. Mm-hmm. I would like to see them bring him back if they could. I just like the guy.
Yeah. I wrote an article recently about him. I
love his spirit. I love the fact that he's from here. He played at University of Toledo. I really want to see the Browns win something while he's on the team. I think would mean a lot for the community.
Yeah.
He's from this area.
We'll see if they bring him back. I mean, he's still out there. That might be, like I talked to Steve last night, a late decision. It could be something where they go in the training camp and he's still out there. And, there might be a team that either loses a running back during that time period or the Browns decide they want to pick him up just the last second. Who knows? Yeah.
And again, I mean, unfortunately for the running back position, they're not doling out huge contracts to these guys. And, I mean, I would like to see him flourish if he needs to go to, another team, like let's say the Miami Dolphins or, whatever, just pick a team.
Right.
But, I would love to have Kareem Hunt back because I think he does a lot for the team and he's a good insurance policy because you need depth. I don't care. Everybody, when you look at these teams, they look so good, in May, June, and July.
Yeah.
But when the season starts, it's like a war of attrition.
I know on the Dog Pound Daily, I write for them too, and then also Cleveland Sports Talk. There was an article today. Our editor in chief, Randy, wrote about. He was reporting about Ezekiel Elliott being out there still as a free agent, and the prospects of him coming to Cleveland late. He didn't agree with that. He didn't think that was much of a good case because Elliott's kind of run out of juice these last while. So I didn't know if you ever, would that appeal to you? Someone like bringing in Zeke? I mean, he was a former Buckeye.
I mean, as a huge Buckeye fan, and supporter, my son goes to Ohio State. I mean, I love Ezekiel Elliott, but I don't think he would be a great fit here.
No.
Because I think he still thinks he's got a lot in the tank. I think he's going to want some big money and a lot of catches and touches. And I think, with Deshaun Watson and all these receivers and tight ends, it's going to be hard to give Nick Chubb a lot of touches. So
that's a good point. Yeah.
I just don't think there's enough balls to go around. So
no,
I would kind of say, and Ezekiel Elliott might be a little bit of a high maintenance guy.
Yes.
So I would say I would like to see him go somewhere else.
Well, we'll talk about some other Buckeyes here as we start talking here about the draft. Before we get into the draft, I'm going to take a quick break. So we'll be right back. This is the Johnny Cleveland podcast. We're going to pause and go dead quiet here for about 3 seconds, and we'll be right back, folks. Okay, we are back. How is everybody? Okay, we were finishing our chat about free agency. Any final thoughts before we jump into the draft there, BP?
I would like to go to the defense for a minute, talk about what the Browns did in free agency with the defense.
Yep.
Now, I gave the Browns offense a grade of B, but for the defensive moves, I gave them an A.
Okay.
Because I really like, they brought in Dalvin Tomlinson from, defensive tackle, and they brought in, Juan Thornhill, safety from your Kansas
Love
City.
that kid.
Yeah. And they also brought in, I'm not even going to say the guy from Houston, the edge rusher.
I'm calling him O squared because like it's double O,
Yeah.
so just O squared.
Yeah. I'm going to need time on that one.
Right.
Maybe by September I'll get it. But for now, yeah, let's call him O squared.
O squared.
Or Okanaranku.
Yeah. Double O.
Yeah. Just like, JOK. JOK works for me, for the guy, the linebacker from Notre Dame. So,
okay.
On our team. The Browns re-signed Taki, which I'm happy about. I like him.
Good. Yes.
That was a good, solid signing. He was injured during the season. Hopefully he'll be ready to go in September. Same thing, Anthony Walker. The Browns re-signed him. The Browns also signed this guy Tristan Hill as like a backup defensive tackle. So
yeah,
I think what they did is they fortified, like the safety position, the defensive tackle. They brought in an edge rusher. So I think they did a good job in filling the needs with guys that are, affordable for the most part. Now, Tomlinson cost a good amount of money, but the Browns really that was the biggest hole in the Browns. They need a run stopper, a defensive tackle.
And I think that's like BP. We talked a little bit. I talked to Steve the other night about kind of that strategy that they had on free agency. It was interesting that they did try to go after the Philadelphia Eagle, Hargrove. Didn't get him, but because they didn't get him, then they were able to put their money in on Tomlinson and the double O squared guy, and that actually kind of probably benefited the Browns free agency there on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah. Now, what's one thing I did want to note about free agency also, that there's a lot of guys that haven't signed yet, which is surprising. Like John Johnson III has not signed with any team yet. Neither has Jadeveon Clowney, and neither has Ronnie Harrison. So you see, I wouldn't mind if some of those guys came back to the Browns. I personally met John Johnson III. He's a cool guy, very nice, great guy, super nice guy. But, he didn't work out here. But, I actually like him. And Ronnie Harrison, on paper, seemed like a safety that really should be good. I like him.
Yeah. And he's only 25 years old, too. But, he came back last year after he was had that 1-year contract, came back again. So I don't know if he'd come back. But, John Johnson, I don't know.
No, John Johnson probably won't come back because he's more of a higher level guy. He's going to want, and then they brought in Thornhill to take his spot.
Right.
Ronnie Harrison, I can see, he doesn't make as much money as John Johnson. So, maybe the Browns, again, you said he's a young guy. I know he's like 6'3", 210. That's good size for a safety. And he's an Alabama guy. To me, I would give this guy another chance. Like, they've met all the Browns let Greedy Williams go.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. So, there's been some attrition. Like the Browns have lost some guys. So we'll see.
Now, I saw the other day, or the discussion right now is another defensive tackle, or Al Woods, a very experienced guy who most recently played for the Seattle Seahawks on the line. He's come in for a visit now with the Browns this past week, so that could be another pickup late here that the Browns make. Yeah,
but like I said, overall, I really like what the Browns did in free agency. So overall, I give them a B+ for all their free agency moves. I give them a B on offense. I give them an A on defense. And I think they did a good job, especially since they're limited with their draft picks. They don't have a number 1 pick in the draft, first round pick. They don't have a second round pick now. So if you want,
they did. I'm sorry, BP. They did really well with overall pretty well, like you're saying. So transitioning to the draft talk, then where do you think Andrew Berry's going to go with this, with his strategy? What are you thinking?
Yeah, well, I just want to give our audience sort of an overview of where the Browns are drafting. Like a lot of people don't know. You have to almost we have these are the first 3 picks we have in the draft. Pick number 74 in the 3rd round, pick number 98 in the 3rd round, and pick number 111 in the 4th round.
Okay.
Well, that's good to know. So you don't want to waste a lot of time studying the first round, which, unfortunately, we're not there this year. So we don't have to worry about the 4 quarterbacks that are going and all these other guys, all the defensive tackles that have been in prison, down in Alabama and Georgia. we don't have to worry about all those guys. We can worry about the third round and beyond. And so I got the Browns with the 74th pick. That's like an early third round pick. I think the Browns, in analyzing the Browns roster after free agency, I really think their first focus should be on edge rusher.
Okay.
And I also thought either edge rusher or a linebacker. And also, when you think about it, those guys don't take years to cultivate. Usually with an edge rusher, they're ready to go right off the bat. You don't have to look at these wide receivers the Browns have, guys like David Bell, and who knows if they'll ever develop properly. Same thing with Schwartz. So I think defensive guys usually develop quicker. And so that's why I think the Browns I think this year is do or die for the Browns. I really do. This season is pressure-packed season for Andrew Berry.
Oh, definitely.
Baldy Podesta, Andrew Berry, and and Kevin Stefanski. I think there's a lot of pressure on these guys to get to the playoffs.
Yeah.
So I don't think they have time to develop players at certain positions. I think so. An edge rusher, in my opinion, would be our first pick at pick 74.
Okay.
And so I've got a couple of names. Again, I'm not going to pretend I know these guys inside and out.
What? You haven't been scouting them? Come on now.
No, we don't have it in our budget.
That's true. Not yet, at least.
Maybe next year. Yeah. Next year I'll get on a Spirit Airlines flight.
That's our goal, folks. That's our goal. All right.
But I like this guy, Derek Hall from Auburn. He's rated as 56th best prospect in the draft. He's he's got all the right measurables, 6'3", 256.
Yes.
Edge rusher. I like guys from the SEC because I know they're proven and they're usually the best of the best. So I always like guys from Alabama, Georgia, Auburn, and LSU. Those type of guys. Usually move the needle for me. It's almost like a lineage, just like in basketball. You want guys that went to Kentucky. You want guys that went to Duke.
Yep.
So it's almost like the best guys go to the best programs. It's usually how it goes. That's my opinion. So that's Derek Hall is my first choice for an edge rusher for the Browns with the 74th pick. I also like a guy out of Notre Dame. He's rated as the number maybe 61st prospect, Jeremiah Foskey.
Okay, right. Yep.
So, and then, that's, there's also another guy, BJ Ojulari, whose brother, Aziz Ojulari, plays for the Giants, and he's a solid player. This guy, Ojulari, went to LSU.
Yep. I've written about him.
He's also ranked as the 58th best prospect, edge rusher. I mean, usually I like it when there's lineage, when there's brothers, then there's been success.
Yep.
Just you see the Bosa brothers, some of the guys, there's a brother, Terrell Edmonds, and his brother have been successful in the NFL. So usually when the brothers, that's a trait that you look for. I think they'll be, usually successful. If one guy has already made it to the NFL, the other guy usually will follow suit. And there's a couple other guys. Dayon Henley is a more of a linebacker from Washington State.
Yep, I wrote about him too. Yep.
And there's a guy from Alabama, Henry, and his name is spelled Tutu.
Tutu. No. Okay.
Yeah, you got to look him up. His name is spelled Too-Too. So with a name like that, he's got to be good. Henry Tutu. So
I've got now the local kid here in Ohio. He's not from Alabama. Carl Brooks is another kid out of Bowling Green. I know he's been getting some.
No, you're not related. You're not related to him, are you?
Brooks? No.
Okay.
No.
Then that would be policy.
He's a good. He's getting some props. I think they're projecting him as a 4th or 5th rounder. He played 5 seasons, so he doesn't quite fit the criteria for an Andrew Berry player who's young. He's he's 23, I think. But he had a very successful career. Bowling Green obviously was the max, so the competition wasn't as strong. But those are a lot of names. The other name that I have circulated a couple times, and I say this guy, he's from Missouri. His name's Isaiah McGuire. We have Jordan Elliott right now from Missouri, and so he's also projected as a 5th or 6th rounder. So I was looking at some of these middle round guys on the edge. There's another young kid, Nick Hampton, out of Appalachian State. That's another name that I was kind of doing some research on recently. So
Well, I always liked Appalachian State because they beat
Yeah.
Michigan. They beat Michigan one year.
That's right.
I couldn't believe it.
Yep. So those are now. Where's the next area of need, you think?
Yeah.
The Browns
And also, so we covered edge rusher. There's some good names there. I think the Browns will definitely use that, edge rusher or linebacker. And then defensive tackle. There's a guy from Ohio State, Zach Harrison.
Yes.
I've always rooted for him. He's a good guy. He always stood out to me during the Ohio State games. He's ranked as the 68th best prospect in the draft. So I would keep an eye on him possibly as a defensive tackle. He could.
Right.
So that could be good. And then as a safety, as a backup safety, again, from Alabama, Jordan Battle, which, that's a great name, with a name like Battle,
Yes.
From Alabama. He sounds like a winner to me. And he's rated as the 90th best prospect. So I could easily see the Browns taking a look at some of these guys we've talked about here.
How about running back? Where do you find yourself on running back? I know like you were talking earlier about not having much experience behind Nick Chubb. Do you think the Browns pursue a running back in this draft?
No, not at all. Because remember, they drafted Jerome Ford.
Yes.
I call him the president. That's my nickname because it sounds like Gerald Ford.
Right.
So they drafted him last year out of Cincinnati, and he showed, in preseason, he showed a lot. He really did. A lot of people up here in Cleveland were super impressed with him, and they thought he was actually he might have pushed Kareem Hunt to be traded, in the off season of last season, but it didn't happen. But I think a lot of people were pushing for that.
Okay.
After, Jerome Ford was drafted, but I think the Browns see him as their backup even though I do like Kareem Hunt, I think he's also a very affordable backup to Nick Chubb. So I think that's how they're going to go. Okay. But I do really like this Jordan Battle, the safety from Alabama, is a pick for the Browns, and I
like that.
Yeah. So that's my thought for the Browns draft. And if you want, we could cover another topic.
Yeah. No, I thought we're gonna hit the schedule here next. Before we run over to there, I think as far as the running backs, Cleveland has had history of at least taking somebody during the draft. So I'm going to say that they're going to take somebody maybe in the late rounds, kind of like they did with Demetric Felton, who UCLA, we don't know if he's going to make the team, but I had a couple names down here. One of them was Rashawn Johnson, a kid out of Texas. He wasn't the main guy at Texas. He was kind of like the backup, but he's had a productive 3 seasons down there. 90 carries, 500 or 600 yards, good size, like 6'1", 6'2". So that's one name. And then another name that keeps circulating with Browns fans is Deuce Vaughn, who out of K-State. He's a little guy. You never know what's going to happen in the kicking game with our special teams. So he's, I don't see him necessarily being, he could not be drafted and maybe selected as a free agent, if he doesn't get drafted. That we were talking about that on the other show the other night about how Andrew Berry has done a good job, especially with guys who don't get drafted. He stays in contact with them, and then they sign some of these guys who are there's a guy that the Browns play with right now, AC Green, who plays cornerback, and he was an unsigned guy, and that's an example of kind of one where from stories that I was told that, they stayed in contact with him, and immediately when the draft ended, like he was one of their first to sign. So let's transition to this schedule. We kind of shift gears a little bit. I know we don't have the schedule out yet, but we know who the team is going to be playing home and away. I did read something interesting about how the Browns, and this isn't unique necessarily, but they have 3 games on the West Coast. I believe they go to play, or they play the Rams, they play Seattle, and they play out in Denver. And I think they put in a request at some point to the NFL recently that they wanted to see if they could get those games together, at least 2 of them, so they weren't having to travel, back and forth. So what are your thoughts on the schedule, and how do you see the Browns doing with that?
Sure. One thing I did want, you mentioned Denver, and I have to give the audience a tidbit. I always like to throw in, but it was announced on ESPN yesterday that John Elway was released from the Denver Broncos.
I missed that. What the hell? What's
so, he's been our nemesis for only 30 years.
Oh my God. Yeah. You mean horse mouth. You mean,
right.
Buck teeth,
Right. And it was just,
he ruined my childhood.
Yeah. And I was at that, I was at the drive ready to go to the Super Bowl, and he ruined my good time. Back in 86.
Yep.
It was 87, I think.
Yeah, I remember you telling me this. You were there with your family or your
and we were all ready to go to, Pasadena or New Orleans, wherever the Super. We were like making our plans. How are we going to do business at these cities and write off the trip to go to the Super Bowl? And then, of course, Elway brings it back. And but it was announced on ESPN yesterday that Elway's contract expired with the Broncos, and he has not been renewed, and he is done. The Broncos are done with John Elway officially. After only, since 1984 when they drafted him.
Wow. Yeah. Do you remember how that went down too? Remember when he got drafted
I do.
Wasn't he originally drafted? What?
He was drafted originally by the Baltimore Colts.
Yes.
And he did not want to go. He made it be known that he did not want to go to Baltimore because he was a West Coast guy. He went to high school in California, went to Stanford.
Yep.
He said, "There's no way I'm not going to report." In fact, I think he was a baseball player. He had an offer to play for the Yankees, I think, and so he was ready to play baseball.
Yeah, he did.
And so he made this whole big stink, and I don't know what the Baltimore Colts ended up getting for him, but obviously it wasn't enough. Say what you want. John Elway is a Hall of Fame player.
Yes.
He really messed up our dreams here in Cleveland. But
kind of like Michael Jordan with the Cavs. But
exactly.
We'll have another conversation on that on another show.
Right, but to me, it's shocking that that the Broncos parted ways with John Elway, like in all capacities. He's not even an advisor or this or that. He is so.
Well, isn't it kind of funny too that like Bernie Kosar, our favorite childhood, he's been released too. I mean, he was a while back, but in the last year as well. So both the guys that were quarterbacking that great game back in the day, now they're not.
Yeah. I mean, the Broncos are owned by the part of the Walmart family now. So they're not owned by the longtime, Broncos owners.
Yeah.
So they probably felt hey, we don't need to pay Elway. We'll bring in our own people and we'll stay with our own general manager. And, that's it. They that's what happens, when there's new ownership groups,
Yeah.
But I just wanted to give you that tidbit. I thought it was shocking that,
that is shocking. I've got to go read up on that.
Yeah. And so you did mention the Browns schedule. I mean, I thought I would touch on it just for a second.
Sure. Yep.
But, obviously the order of the games hasn't been announced and all the times, but we do know the opponents. So I'm not going to go over every team, but I'll go over some of the games I think we could lose. So I think the Browns are playing the Jets at home.
Again.
Yeah, again. And unfortunately, the Jets are probably going to have Aaron Rodgers as their quarterback, most likely, but nothing's official. I hope it falls through. As a long New York hater and a longtime, Browns fan, I don't want to play Aaron Rodgers.
Hell no.
Because he's tough. He really is. But so that I think the Browns will have that's a home game against the Jets. I think that'll be a fantastic game, and we owe them one for sure.
Oh, yeah.
They helped, even though it was game 2 last year, they helped screw up our season last year. So
they did.
And then we got, after the Jets, we've got the 49ers coming in here. That's a home game, and Shanahan is a fantastic coach. I've got a ton of respect for Kyle Shanahan, the coach of San Francisco.
Yep.
I don't know how he does it with that running game. They've always got a great defense. He's got the running game. They've gashed us for, with 200 yards every time we play them in rushing yardage, and they always piece together, who knows? But so I got questions if the Browns, and Stefanski needs to be better as a coach. Last year we got clobbered by the Patriots at home.
Yes.
I mean, everybody said the Patriots had a bad year. They came into Cleveland. They beat us about 38-15 or something. It
was an awful game. Yeah.
And that actually, and I was really disappointed in Stefanski's performance. I mean, Belichick just outcoached him every which way. And we became 2-4 after that loss. And that I said on local radio, I said, that's the end of the season for us. I said, I don't see us bouncing back. That was such an embarrassing loss.
It really was. You think about it, that's not a game that a lot of people talk about. They focus on the Jets loss because it was so heartbreaking, but New England came in and they just crushed us.
Yeah. No, you're right. And it was embarrassing. And maybe, now Jacoby Brissett started that game for the Browns. Maybe Bill Belichick has some kind of insight into Jacoby Brissett.
I think you're right a little bit. Yeah, because he did play quite a bit of time there in New
maybe
England.
He still has, his cell phone codes or something. I don't know, but he like had his number big time.
I think it was Stefanski was, I know people were talking about the Denny's menu, but he was probably trying to order too many items that day and wasn't focused on the game. Okay, back to reality. Okay.
Right. So we're going through the schedule. I think at the home, I think the Browns will take care of Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, and Baltimore at home.
Really? Okay, great.
Yeah. I think the Browns will take care of teams like the Jaguars at home, Tennessee Titans, the Bears, and Arizona at home. So on the road, I always assume the Browns are going to have a hard time winning at Pittsburgh, at Baltimore, and Cincinnati. That's just a given.
Yes.
Unless they're like a super team so I consider those to be potential losses, which is fair. Pittsburgh is a pretty good team.
Yeah.
They're rebuilding. I think we're better than them, but so we'll see what happens with that. But they still have guys like JJ Watt. They do have some gamers. So we'll see about that. And I think when the Browns go, even though the Browns are a much better team than Seattle, I think they'll have trouble at Seattle.
Yes.
I just think the Seattle crowd, you've even mentioned it, that they're like.
Well, and I'm going to tell you right now, I've got my daughter lives out there in Seattle. So we're already making plans. I will be in attendance in Seattle. So hopefully that will spark a win for the Browns. I know me being there in the stadium will make a difference.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I was at, there probably won't be many Browns fans at that game. I mean,
my daughter and I will be woofing, hoof, hoof, woof, woof.
I was at the Browns Seattle game a couple years ago when Russell Wilson was the quarterback for Seattle.
Okay.
I was at that game, and they traveled pretty well. I couldn't believe all the green, guys wearing green hair and green leprechaun jackets.
Hey, have you ever been to Seattle?
Yes.
Have you ever had a Seattle dog like before a Mariners game or anything?
No, I never went to a Mariners game.
So a Seattle dog is a hot dog with cream cheese and sauerkraut.
Okay.
Very unique. Cream cheese.
Yeah. Well,
yuck.
At Progressive Field, they have hot dogs with what are those things with like Lucky Charms on them and Cheerios.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So you could try that when you're up here at Progressive Field.
Okay.
I don't recommend it.
I'll just stick to the stadium mustard. We're just all about the stadium mustard.
Yeah.
Can't do anything at a Cleveland sports event without stadium mustard.
Well, I have that here at home.
I've got it right downstairs too. So yep, I'm gonna have some later.
Yeah, and the last time, I know we're taping this now, but the Guardians were winning 2-0 against.
Oh, good. Okay.
Beating your Seattle Mariners.
Oh, that.
But you did mention again. The Browns are also playing at the LA Rams now. The Rams are. I think they're beatable now. But I still think that could possibly be a loss. But I think the Browns can beat the LA Rams now. They're sort of a depleted team. They've lost a bunch of talent.
Yeah.
But they still have Aaron Donald. They'll have Matthew Stafford, but they don't have the receivers they used to have. They lost Jalen Ramsey, the cornerback. So I think the Browns can handle these teams. I'm being very optimistic about the Browns here, but there's a lot of pressure on this season. And
ton.
We haven't mentioned much about Deshaun Watson. I mean, here's a guy making all this money, and he didn't look very good last year for the Browns in those 6 games.
No.
He really didn't. So, we'll see. But there's a lot of pressure on him too with this contract. There's a lot of negativity against him in every NFL stadium. There's a lot of negativity. Maybe he can't handle that. Maybe. Yeah,
we don't really know. I mean, he got 6 games. There's a lot of question marks there. The supporters of Deshaun are going to say, he'll be back to his regular self, or at least they believe that. The naysayers are doubting right now because of what they saw in those 6 games, and the guaranteed money is definitely puts pressure on the team and puts pressure on number 4, himself. So like you said, that going on the road and playing in hostile environments, and that's not going to change. That'll be telling as the season starts and progresses.
Right. Yeah, I've said here on local radio here that the NFL kind of hates the Browns. All the owners are mad at us for that guaranteed contract. So it's almost like we're like a David against Goliath over here.
Oh, yeah.
So there's a lot. Everybody wants to see us fail with this Deshaun Watson trade and the contract, and people don't even love they didn't love the Haslams to start with. They didn't love the Haslam, and then the Haslams, they bought 25% of the Milwaukee Bucks. Which is, I'm not that happy about that, because they've never won anything here with Cleveland, and yet they're branching out to buy a big chunk of the Milwaukee Bucks for $800 million. So
yeah. Any final thoughts on the schedule there before we're going to kind of wrap things up, I think?
Just, since it's April 7th, I'm going to give you my we haven't seen what the Browns do in the draft. You never know. They could trade up.
Yeah.
For a first-round pick or a second-round pick. But I'm predicting the Browns, as is, will go 11-6.
That's generous. That's a nice. Yeah. It could very well happen.
That gets you into the playoffs. They might be able to win the division. I think the Browns are. I just heard again today, Joe Mixon is in trouble with the law down in Cincinnati.
Well, that's not a shocker.
No, but that it's
no. I get no, and I think like Brad, you said at the beginning, the team finished 7-10 a year ago, but realistically, I mean, there's a lot of what ifs, and I know you don't want to go down that road, but honestly, they should have won the Jets game.
Right.
They should have beaten Atlanta last year. They were in control of that game. The Chargers game. Those are 3 games at least, realistically, that they could have easily won. So that would have given them 10 wins.
And they also lost at home. They got swept by the Steelers. The Steelers were supposed to be rebuilding. We lost, I think, that first game at home, 15-10.
Yes.
I think it was a really ugly game. And so, that was really bitter. It's always I hate losing to Pittsburgh. I hate losing to Baltimore.
We all hate losing to Pittsburgh. But I have to give a compliment again to the Fans First Sports Network. The guys from Pittsburgh, the affiliate with the Steelers, they've really been helping with get this group and this network off and running. So I'll give them their due and their props.
I mean, I used to not bank with PNC Bank because I found out they were based out of Pittsburgh.
Right.
But so that's how much I hate Pittsburgh. Sorry.
Well, Brad, we're going to have to get you back on. We'll have a couple more shows here as we get closer to the draft, and then once we get into the draft, our Fanatical Elves Network, we're going to be providing everybody with some updates, immediate conversation right after some of these picks. So Brad will be coming back on, and hopefully some of the other contributors. So you might hear from them, give their takes. If the Browns do have their first draft pick at 74 or 98, and let's stick to it, expect to hear from us. We'll be there ready to go. And so plan on tuning into our network, and our multiple podcasts are going to be popping at you. So we really appreciate you, Brad, coming on. BP from Pepper Pike coming on today. I appreciate all of your insight. And I think, there's a lot of optimism. We've been talking about that. And obviously as a Browns fan, there's always optimism. And with the draft just around the corner, it's going to be in Kansas City, starting April 27th. The great city of Kansas City. Some great barbecue out there and steaks, and had a chance to live out there all those years. So I've always liked getting out there to Kansas. But
will you be going to the draft?
What now?
Will you be attending the draft?
I would love to, but I don't think I'm going to be able to manage it this time. I did get to go to the draft a few years ago back. Did you get to go to that too, by the way? Did you run up there to the? I didn't know.
I watched that on TV because
it was during the pandemic and kind of coming. Yeah.
But on a side note, there was a fantastic band that played down there, and I'm friends with those guys. The Sunrise Jones band that played. They played during the NFL draft on stage. They were like,
Oh yeah. It was really fun. Yeah.
Yeah, they're a really good band. So if anybody ever needs a good band for a party, let me know.
Is there any way, like anybody that's listening to the podcast, again, where to reach you or find you? I know you do a lot with basketball as well. You want to share out any of that before we let you go?
Yeah. Well, just to let you know, we are going to have a Cleveland Cavs watch party sometime to watch the Cavs play the Knicks sometime after April 15th. That's going to be held, and I'm going to post this online.
Okay.
We have the exact date, but it's going to be after April 15th. It'll be for one of the Cavs away games against the Knicks. It's going to be held at the High and Dry Bar and Restaurant in Tremont, which is a really fun place.
Yeah.
You're of course invited. Everybody's invited.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then we're going to have giveaways, trivia contest. I'm going to run a trivia contest at halftime. Then we're going to have Garrett Bush from 92.3 The Fan's going to be there, and Earl the Pearl Maudlin's going to be there. Those are two good guys. G. Bush really knows his football. So the audience can ask any questions they want for the guys before the Cavs Knicks game, and I'll be running a contest with prizes at halftime. So we always have a lot of fun. We have a couple hundred people show up. There's TVs everywhere. It's really good bar food, burgers, fries, onion rings, pierogies, all that kind of stuff.
Okay. Well,
I
excellent.
recommend it. Yeah. And you can check me out at BP and Pepper Pike on Twitter, or, at BP Ohio 2015.
Yeah. Great content. Great. We love having you. And I'm so happy that you're part of our programming here with the Fanatical Elves Network. Again, this is the Johnny Cleveland podcast. We have had BP and Pepper Pike join us tonight, talking all draft. We're going to be coming to you here again. We got a full slate of schedule coming up this next week, multiple shows, and as we're getting closer to that draft for the Brownies. So again, everybody, thank you for joining us. BP, again, last time, thank you again. And I like to finish the show by saying, everybody remember too, that's right, keep smiling. Everybody take care.